7 men who collectively generated more revenue than some countries' GDP still have to ask permission before cutting their own hair. That's not a joke. That's HYBE policy. BTS debuted under Big Hit Entertainment in 2013 with practically nothing, a small label, a crowded trainee system, and zero guarantee of success. What followed was one of the fastest rises in music history. Sold-out stadiums on 6 continents, a combined social media following in the hundreds of millions, and contracts renewed in 2023 that keep them locked in until at least 2026. But with that scale of success comes a machine that never fully sleeps, a management apparatus with its own rules, its own image calculus, and its own very specific ideas about what 7 of the world's most famous men should and should not be doing in their free time. Some of those restrictions are about legal liability. Some are about brand protection. Some are, frankly, about control. And some of the members have pushed back on camera, in lyrics, and in late-night live streams that HYBE absolutely did not approve. So what exactly does a billion-dollar K-pop agency tell its biggest artists they cannot do? 7 members, 7 hobbies, 7 answers. Number 7, tattoo culture, Jungkook. Jungkook started getting tattooed in 2019, and he did not slow down. His first permanent tattoo was the word ARMY inked across his right-hand fingers, first spotted when he was photographed at an airport after a break. That was just the opening entry in what became a highly personal visual record etched directly onto his skin. He now has over 14 tattoos, including the number 7 behind his ear and 0613 for BTS's debut date. That 0613 marks the 13th of June, 2013. BTS's debut day and a clock tattoo elsewhere on his body shows 3:23 to 3:25 a.m., his exact time of birth. The forearm has a crossword-style design with the phrase, "rather be dead than cool," pulled from the Nirvana song, Stay Away. His stated favorite is a tiger flower on his right forearm, his birth flower, because its flower language translates to please, give me love. He told a SiriusXM host it was, in his words, beautiful and painful at the same time. Every piece of ink on this man has a story behind it, and every single one of those stories has also been covered up, bandaged, or hidden the moment a camera crew showed up for an official broadcast. Here's the mechanism that makes this a restriction and not just a personal choice. South Korea's Supreme Court ruled in 1992 that only medical personnel can legally perform tattooing, making tattooing by non-medical persons illegal. The cultural stigma ran deeper than the legal question. For decades, visible tattoos in South Korea were primarily associated with organized crime, a cultural signal that carried serious social weight. The Korea Communications Commission enforces a rule against showing tattoos on TV, which is why Jungkook has to cover his hands and arms with bandages when he appears on national television. Networks required idols to cover ink with flesh-colored patches or long sleeves during broadcasts, with the Korea Communications Standards Commission justifying this under rules prohibiting content that causes discomfort or disgust. So HYBE's position here is not entirely its own invention, it is partly the company enforcing a broader broadcast compliance standard on top of its own image management policy. Music and television artists must generally hide tattoos with makeup during performances. For Jungkook, that means bandages on his knuckles, even while he is performing choreography that puts his hands directly in front of cameras. The friction between what Jungkook wanted to express and what the system allowed became visible enough that it escalated into actual legislative debate. South Korean lawmaker Ryu Ho-jung posted photos of Jungkook on Instagram to promote her Tattoo Up Act, a bill designed to make tattooing legal and regulated in South Korea, calling the sight of covered tattoos hideous and directly attributing it to broadcaster regulations. She used him specifically because his global influence had already been quietly shifting public opinion on body art among younger Koreans. The move backfired with fans, who felt their artist was being used as a political prop without his consent, and Ryu eventually issued an apology. But the underlying point stood. the most tattooed member of the world's biggest band, was being forced to cover personal, meaningful artwork every time he stepped on a Korean stage. In June 2022, all 7 BTS members got matching 7 friendship tattoos, one per member in different locations, while Korean television was still actively censoring those same tattoos. The gap between what these men were doing in their private lives and what HYBE could show the public could not have been clearer. Jungkook kept getting inked anyway. The bandages kept going on. And that quiet standoff between an artist's self-expression and his agency's broadcast compliance has never fully resolved. Number 6. DIY hairstyling. Jin. Kim Seokjin Jin is the oldest member of BTS, born in 1992, and debuted at 20 years old in 2013 after being scouted on the street by a big hit entertainment staff member. He had no formal idol training before joining the group. He was a film student at Konkuk University when they approached him. By his own account, in various interviews and live streams over the years, he spent the early years of BTS scrambling to catch up on dancing and performance skills that his younger bandmates had been drilling for years. What he never lacked, however, was a very particular kind of confidence, a relaxed, unshakable self-assurance that made him historically terrible at following rules he disagreed with. One of the most consistent and well-documented rules across every major South Korean entertainment agency, Big Hit included, is that artists do not change their own appearance without management approval. HYBE provides an in-house and freelance styling team responsible for stage costumes, music video wardrobes, press and concept looks, and tour outfit stylists who coordinate concepts, fittings, tailoring, and sourcing. The logic is straightforward. Kpop acts are carefully constructed visual brands, and a spontaneous hair decision by a member can throw off an entire comeback concept that has been months in the making. Hair color, cut, and style are coordinated across all 7 members as part of the overall image management for each era. Every change goes through approval. That is the system. Jin did not care about the system. Jin admitted on a live stream that he wanted his hair to return to its natural black color. Staff were against this, so he told them directly, "If you oppose it, I will dye my hair by myself." They eventually gave in. That was not an isolated moment. Jin has also confirmed that when HYBE hairstylists approach him with scissors, he simply shows them a closed fist, the Korean equivalent of rock in rock, paper, scissors, until they realize they have, in his words, lost. He has discussed cutting his own hair with kitchen scissors rather than waiting for the styling team. Jin cut and dyed his own hair without the company's consent during performance periods because he felt his hair was too long or simply wanted a new look. HYBE's hairstylists had to intervene and repair the results. The scale of what this disrupts is worth understanding. BTS members reportedly need approval for any hairstyle changes because their visuals are tied directly to scheduled comeback concepts, brand endorsement contracts, and coordinated promotional content that can involve dozens of external parties. Jin going rogue with a pair of kitchen scissors is not just a personal choice. It is a logistics problem that creates cascading corrections for an entire professional team. And yet, Jin openly admitted on a V-Live broadcast, "I don't follow what the agency says." He said it directly, on camera, while Jimin sat next to him looking mildly horrified. Jin's actual hobbies are genuinely wide-ranging snowboarding, golf, wakeboarding, tennis, surfing, scuba diving, cooking, gaming, and fishing, many of which carry their own set of HYBE complications. But the hair situation stands out precisely because it is so mundane. This is not a man sneaking off to do extreme sports. This is a man who just wants to cut his own hair, gets told no, and proceeds to cut it anyway. The fact that he discusses this publicly, laughs about it, and has done it repeatedly without serious consequence says something specific about both Jin's personality and about the leverage BTS members have accumulated over the years. Rules at HYBE apply firmly until you are famous enough that enforcing them costs the company more than ignoring them does. Jin understood that math long before management wanted to admit it. Number 5. Motorcycle riding, Suga. Min Yoongi Suga grew up in Daegu, South Korea, in a working-class family with limited financial resources. When Big Hit accepted him as a trainee in 2010, he was a teenager who was already writing and recording underground rap music in his spare time. The trainee system in South Korea does not pay a salary. It operates on a debt model where the company covers living costs, training, and production, all of which gets deducted from future earnings. To survive, Suga took a part-time delivery job, riding a motorcycle to make ends meet, while simultaneously trying to build a music career from nothing. He was doing both at the same time, training to be an idol during the day, delivering packages on a motorcycle to eat at night. While making deliveries on a motorcycle, Suga was struck by a car at an intersection. He described the moment in BTS's documentary series Burn the Stage. "I was delivering when I got hit. Bam! I open my eyes and see the wheels here, right in front of my eyes." He was pulled under the car and dislocated his left shoulder. Because of the injury, he had to stop boing breakdancing, which was one of his genuine passions at the time, and he ended up quitting the delivery job. He initially told his bandmates he had simply fallen down, hiding the fact that it was a car accident because he was afraid being honest would get him fired from the trainee program. When the company eventually noticed something was wrong and pushed him for the truth, Big Hit decided to pay him a stipend so he would not need to work delivery jobs anymore. That injury did not go away. It followed him through training, through debut, through years of performing. In November 2020, Big Hit Entertainment announced that Suga had undergone surgery to repair a torn shoulder labrum. In a statement to fans afterward, Suga said, "Since I perform as part of my job, I tried to avoid the surgery as much as I could and endured with rehabilitation and shots. However, I was afraid because it kept getting worse whenever I had to perform." He had been managing a structurally damaged shoulder through live performances, world tours, and concert runs for years before finally agreeing to go under the knife. Big Hit Music did not disclose the specific reason for this, but speculation points to his left shoulder surgery in 2020 as the likely factor that later led to him being deemed unfit for regular combat duty during his mandatory military service. Now here is where the story closes in, almost poetic way that no one could have scripted. On the 6th of August 2024, Suga was found by police in Yongsan-gu, Seoul, after falling off an electric scooter while intoxicated. His blood alcohol content was over 0.08%, the legal threshold for license revocation in South Korea. He was the first to acknowledge what happened publicly, posting on Weverse. "While parking my electric scooter at the front gate in front of my place, I fell by myself, and there was a police officer nearby. As a result of drinking, my license has been revoked and I've been fined." Big Hit Music also issued a swift apology of its own, and in the 2 weeks that followed, Korean media ran approximately 1,400 stories about the incident. The man whose shoulder was shattered by a motorcycle accident as a broke trainee, the same shoulder that eventually disqualified him from frontline. Military service was now in the news for a motorized vehicle. Incident again, decades later, this time as one of the most famous musicians on the planet. HYBE's position on motorized vehicle use for its artists had never been made more obviously necessary, and yet here was the exact same member, the one with the most personal history with this category of risk, demonstrating exactly why those restrictions exist in the first place. Number 4, unsupervised live broadcasting, V. Kim Taehyung 5 was born in Daegu in 1995 and joined Big Hit as a trainee in 2011. He was the last member revealed to the public before BTS's debut in 2013, kept hidden from promotional materials until almost the last moment, a calculated decision by the label to preserve surprise. That dynamic, of being controlled and managed and strategically withheld, ran through the early years of his career. What emerged on the other side of that was a member with a deeply spontaneous personality, someone who communicates with fans the way a person talks to friends, without pre-planning, without a script, and frequently without checking whether anyone at HYBE has approved the session. HYBE does not allow its artists to conduct live broadcasts without staff supervision. All live broadcasts of BTS members, whether conducted at home or at company headquarters, are meant to be monitored by staff to prevent unwanted situations. The logic behind this is clear. An unmonitored live stream is an open, real-time channel to millions of people, with no edit button and no recall function. One unplanned comment about an unreleased album, an internal disagreement, a personal detail, any of it can become an international headline within minutes. For a group generating billions in market value, that kind of uncontrolled communication pipeline is, from a management perspective, genuinely dangerous. HYBE's documented policies require that social media posts be coordinated with PR teams, with management able to draft, review, or delay messages for strategic timing. Spontaneous live streams are, by design, the opposite of that. V and Jungkook are the two members most consistently identified as surprising HYBE staff with unplanned broadcasts, going live on their own without prior company consent. V's pattern, specifically, is one of radical unpredictability. He has launched streams from his phone late at night, in casual clothes, barefaced, talking directly and casually with fans in a way that feels entirely unmanaged, because it often is. In September 2025, V held what fans believe may be his shortest Weverse broadcast yet, just 1 minute and 41 seconds. Audio only, apparently taken while he was on a late-night run. He greeted fans briefly, mentioned he was about to wash up, and ended the session almost immediately. Fans on social media described trying to click the notification and finding it already over. That particular live generated more discussion than some full-length broadcast specials. The influence V commands through even the most minimal, unstructured interaction is statistically documented. V holds the record for the most-watched live video on Weverse, at over 504 million views, the first live ever to surpass 500 million views, and the fastest to reach it. That audience reach is precisely what makes unmonitored broadcasting such a significant policy question for HYBE. When V casually live-streamed himself playing an indie game called Goose Goose Duck on Weverse, the game's concurrent player count jumped from 6,000 to 800,000 within 2 months. That is not the behavior of a person whose social media presence requires careful corporate management. That is a person whose every unplanned impulse has measurable market consequences. In July 2025, the tension around HYBE's management of V's public presence became visible in a different way. During Paris Fashion Week, Anna Wintour personally invited Taeyoung to Vogue World Hollywood. He responded with enthusiasm, and before he could confirm, his manager interrupted with a cautious, "We'll try to figure out," prompting widespread fan frustration at what they saw as micromanagement of his public interactions. The through line is consistent. V's instinct is to connect directly, spontaneously, and on his own terms. HYBE's instinct is to supervise, coordinate, and control the timing of everything. The collision between those two instincts has produced some of the most genuinely unfiltered fan communication in BTS's entire career, and some of the most anxious moments for the people whose job is to manage what the world's most watched man says in real time. Number 3. Solo Art Walking RM. Kim Namjoon RM became BTS's leader by default of seniority and by undeniable intellectual gravity. He was the only member Bang Si-hyuk recruited first, building the entire group around him in 2010 after discovering him in Seoul's underground rap scene. He was 15 years old, already writing and recording tracks that sounded nothing like commercial idol music. By the time BTS debuted in 2013, RM was functioning as their primary English communicator, chief lyricist, and public-facing voice, a role that has never stopped expanding. He speaks in full, nuanced sentences in interviews, reads philosophy for leisure, and has donated 100 million won to the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art Foundation in Korea. He is, by any reasonable measure, the most intellectually engaged member of one of the most commercially managed groups on the planet. That gap between his interior life and the management apparatus around him shows up most visibly in one specific habit: walking into galleries alone, without advance notice, and without asking anyone's permission. RM's relationship with visual art began in 2018 when he wandered into the Art Institute of Chicago during a break in a tour schedule. The experience was, in his own words, it was like, wow. I was looking at these art pieces and it was an amazing experience. From that point forward, museum and gallery visits became a consistent, frequent personal practice, not a publicity activity, not a brand initiative, just a man who found something that genuinely moved him and kept returning to it. A gallerist in Seoul who received RM described the pattern directly. When he visited us, he would do so without giving us prior notice. He would quietly come to the gallery to see art when it is not too crowded. That detail, no prior notice, quiet entry, personal time is precisely the friction point with HYBE's protocols. HYBE's documented touring rules require that BTS members not go out without at least some big hit staff and a bodyguard present, which is a standard security arrangement for artists operating at their level of global fame. The reason is not abstract. In September 2025, a woman in her 40s attempted to enter Jungkook's apartment building late at night, claiming to be his friend. Surveillance cameras captured the attempt and police detained her. Sa-sang culture, the term for obsessive, boundary-crossing fans in South Korea, is a documented and persistent safety threat for BTS specifically, with incidents ranging from unauthorized home visits to coordinated tracking of members' movements. For HYBE, an artist showing up at a public venue unannounced and alone is a genuine security problem, not a preference. For RM, it is also irreplaceable. RM told ART News, "Visual art is a different field, and because I can purely enjoy them without any strings attached, the feeling becomes more vivid." That phrase, "without any strings attached," is doing a lot of work. It describes exactly what solo, unannounced gallery visits give him that a coordinated, staffed, security-cleared museum outing cannot. The experience of being a private person engaging with something on his own terms. He is known to pop into different museums and galleries unannounced and share his visits through the kind of photos any regular museum goer would take, the only difference being that his posts send floods of ARMY visitors to the same locations, in a fan phenomenon now documented globally as Namjuning. The scale of what his solo visits generate is extraordinary. When the Chinati Foundation in Texas thanked RM for visiting, their post received 92,000 likes. Their other posts typically receive between 200 and 1,500. In the 24 hours after RM posted from the National Gallery of Art in Washington, without even tagging the institution, the museum gained nearly 3 times its average daily follower count. One man, walking through galleries alone, looking at art he genuinely loves, is generating institutional impact that most museum marketing budgets could never buy. And he does it by doing exactly what HYBE would prefer he not do without a security team: show up somewhere quietly, alone, and just exist in public. Number 2. Martial arts training. Jimin. Park Jimin was born in Busan in 1995 and grew up in a household that took physical discipline seriously. Before he ever thought about becoming an idol, before a dance teacher at Busan High School of Arts spotted his talent and pointed him toward a performance career, Jimin was a martial artist, not recreationally seriously. He spent 8 years training in multiple martial arts disciplines, including Kendo and Taekwondo, achieving a black belt in both. He was inspired to start Kendo specifically by the character Zoro from the anime One Piece. He told his mother he wanted to be the best swordsman, and she enrolled him in classes. From there, the training expanded. He also trained in Hapkido, a Korean martial art, focused on deflecting attacks using joint locking, throwing, and grappling techniques, and was selected as a scholarship student during his freshman year to attend a short-term program in China where he studied Chinese martial arts, a privilege typically reserved only for senior students. By the time Park Jimin walked into big hit entertainment as a trainee, he carried 8 years of multidiscipline combat training in his body. That background is not incidental to who he became as a performer. The coordination, core strength, precision, and body mechanics that years of martial arts drilling build from childhood are the same qualities that made him one of the most technically demanding dancers in a group of already exceptional dancers. The disciplines reinforced each other and also created a compounding problem. Martial arts and dance use overlapping but distinct muscle groups, and forcing a body to serve both disciplines simultaneously puts significant strain on hips, the spine, shoulders, and neck joints. For Jimin specifically, that toll has shown up at critical moments throughout his career. In 2017, during BTS's Wings tour, Jimin was unable to participate in a show in Macau due to neck and shoulder cramping. The following year in London, while preparing for the Love Yourself World Tour, he withdrew from a scheduled appearance on the Graham Norton show because of severe muscle pain in his neck and back. These are not minor inconveniences for a touring group. A BTS member pulling out of a major television appearance in the United Kingdom because of a physical injury is a logistical and commercial event. And both incidents point to the same structural vulnerability. A performer whose prior training has put extraordinary demands on his musculoskeletal system, now running it through the additional stress of full-scale global touring. In January 2022, Jimin was hospitalized after abdominal pain and underwent appendicitis surgery, also receiving a positive COVID-19 diagnosis during the same period. The HYBE position on physically high-risk hobbies for its biggest artists is rooted entirely in mathematics. Every additional physical activity that a BTS member engages in outside of scheduled rehearsal and performance carries injury risk that translates directly into canceled shows, missed promotional appearances, and market impact. Bloomberg News estimated that if BTS members were sidelined during their military service period, HYBE would lose nearly $10 billion over 10 years, with the loss to the South Korean economy approaching $39 billion. That is the financial scale at which HYBE is operating when it weighs the question of whether Jimin should be allowed to continue pursuing the high-contact combat sports he trained in for nearly a decade before debut. Kendo involves strikes with bamboo swords at speed. Taekwondo involves full-contact sparring. Hapkido involves throws and joint locks. None of those activities sit comfortably inside a management plan built around protecting performers worth billions. What Jimin does in a dojang is his identity. What HYBE sees in a dojang is liability. Number 1. Street dancing, J-Hope. Jung Hoseok J-Hope did not come to dance through a structured idol pipeline. He found it the way most people find the thing that defines them. As a child, through imitation, then obsession, then identity. His school in Gwangju had a 30-minute morning dance session, playing videos for students to copy as exercise. His classmates noticed he was different from the others, telling him he was genuinely good. That was all the confirmation a kid needed. He started practicing moves at home, freestyling at local talent shows, and by 6th grade, he was serious enough that his parents enrolled him in Gwangju's Joy Dance Academy. While at the academy, he also joined an underground street dance crew called Neuron, building a local reputation under the name Smile Hoya. From middle school through high school, Neuron was his world, a crew of dancers who practiced together with the intensity of a family, sometimes sleeping at the studio after hours of training. This is the foundation of everything J-Hope became, before BTS, before Big Hit Entertainment spotted him. Before he was ever asked to rap a skill he did not have when he was recruited, and learned entirely after joining the group. He came to Big Hit as a street dancer, and only learned to rap after joining BTS. That sequencing matters enormously, because it means the thing HYBE monetized his performance energy, his technical precision, his physical command of stage space, was built entirely in the unregulated, free-form world of street dance culture. It was built in practice rooms in Gwangju, in underground crews, in the kind of environment that operates by completely different rules than a K-pop management company. Street dance, as J-Hope practiced it growing up, is not choreographed idol performance. It is a living culture with its own history, disciplines, and community popping, locking, house, hip-hop freestyle, each with its own lineage and its own masters. While the 7 members are free to get involved in the composition and creation of their music, there are times when their management has rejected their songs and it has imposed regulation on them that they must strictly follow. That creative control extends equally to performance content, collaborative relationships, and how and where artists present themselves publicly. An idol at J-Hope's level going to Osaka to learn popping from underground masters, or to New York to study with first-generation hip-hop dance pioneers, is not something that fits cleanly inside HYBE's controlled content ecosystem, even when, as ultimately happened, HYBE eventually turned it into a Prime Video docuseries. Hope on the Street, the 2024 Amazon Prime Video docuseries, was created by J-Hope as a final project before his military enlistment, following his quest to reconnect with his dancing roots after a decade of building a career inside BTS. The detail buried in that description is significant. He had to reconnect with his roots. A decade inside the most managed, scheduled, and commercially controlled group on Earth had created enough distance from the unstructured, community-driven dance culture he grew up in that returning to it required a deliberate, documented journey across 5 cities. Members of Neuron recalled that their reunion with J-Hope was like no time had passed, and that his determination, which they remembered from his early years, had transferred directly into his presence on stage, even if audiences and fans could not always identify specifically what they were feeling. The tension at the core of this entry is not just about a hobby being restricted. It is about what happens when an institution takes a person whose entire identity was shaped by free, community-based artistic practice, places that person inside a system of total creative and logistical management for over a decade, and then watches as that person has to actively travel the world to remember who he was before all of it. J-Hope was among the members who broke HYBE's strict copyright rules by sharing posts on social media about BTS content without authorization. Even that small act, sharing something about his own group's work without going through the proper channels, is a window into what it looks like when someone formed by a culture of open, unfiltered creative sharing runs up against an institution built on IP control and approval chains. Street dance gave J-Hope everything. HYBE built a structure around that everything. And the distance between those two realities is exactly one 6-episode docuseries long.